Here's what I want to do. Top 10 reasons why we must welcome the stranger. Top 10. These are my top 10. You can debate the order. I want us to do a top 10 list, starting with 10, arriving at 1. Okay? Top 10 reasons why we must welcome this stranger. And this really, the journey that I've been on, some of these are right in there, right in the heart of it. Okay? Top 10. Number 10. When we welcome the stranger, we strengthen our economy. You probably know this by now. For so long, people doubted this. If we fix our broken immigration system, our gross domestic product, if you love numbers, if you're a CPA or if you're an economist, our gross domestic product is anticipated to increase between 0.8% and 1.3%. Oh, that seems small. No, it's actually huge. Those are huge. Had huge impact on our economy. Our economy grows if we fix the problem. More than 40% of Fortune 500 companies were founded by immigrants or a child or children of immigrants. 40%. These companies employ 10 million people, 4.2 trillion in income. When we welcome the stranger, our economy is strengthened. Number 9. When we welcome the stranger, we strengthen our national security. Actually, you could argue we strengthen our national security and even our security in some of our cities. Just a couple quotes. Paul Ryan from Wisconsin, he ran for vice president. I would say for the sake of our national security, we must modernize our immigration laws. Condoleezza Rice, she used to live here in Colorado, right? When done correctly, immigration reform will enhance our national security. Here's one more on the micro level in cities and towns. America is neither less safe because of immigration, nor is it worse off economically. Those are some of the assumptions. You know that rhetoric is out there. In fact, in regions where immigrants have settled in the past 2 decades, crime has actually gone down. Cities have grown, poor urban neighborhoods have been rebuilt, and small towns that were once on life support are springing back. This coming from a newspaper just 2 days ago. We actually make our country safer. Number 8, when we welcome the stranger, we increase, this will be a surprising one. This one surprised me. We increase tourism in the United States. Tourism. Did you know that tourism is the largest component of our service economy in our country? Fixing our immigration system will help increase international tourism to our country. Number 7, when we welcome the stranger, we increase our standard of living. How many people out there are thinking, when you think about immigration reform and fixing our broken systems, it actually increases our standard of living as a country? Surprised? Let me give you a little bit more there, huh? The most recent academic research suggests that, this is a quote, immigrants raise the overall standard of living of American workers by boosting wages and lowering prices. One reason is that immigrants and U.S.-born workers generally do not compete for the same jobs. Instead, many immigrants complement the work of U.S. employees and therefore increase their productivity. Brookings Institute, a think tank in Washington, D.C. Tourism, who would have thought? Number 6, when we welcome the stranger, we foster innovation. Immigrants start new businesses and file patents at a higher rate than U.S.-born citizens. In fact, immigration is responsible for 1/3 of the explosive growth of patents per capita in the last decade. 1/3. Immigrants started 25% of public U.S. companies that were backed by venture capital. What does that mean? 25% of public companies started with venture capital. That's a lot of them, and that's the big ones. For example, immigrant-founded venture capital companies, Google. eBay, Yahoo, Intel, Sun Systems, the list goes on. When we welcome the stranger, we foster innovation. When we welcome the stranger, we provide resources and aid to the world, to the nations. Huh? What does that mean? Have you ever heard of remittances? So remittances are when foreign workers, out of their income that they earn, they send it back home to their families and friends. Now, I work in international relief and development, and I know the numbers that of all the relief and development coming out of organizations like World Relief and philanthropic foundations and the U.S. government, this one is actually highest. So worldwide, it's somewhere between $250 to $300 billion every year. This is foreign workers, this is worldwide now, sending it back home. Well, back home for many of those people is some of the most difficult places in the world. And it's going back home to their families so their families can have a better life, to invest in their kids, to find work for their families. In the United States, it's somewhere about $120 billion a year. Now those numbers ebb and flow from year to year, but at least $100 billion a year. That is the United States blessing the nation through the foreign-born people here. It's an amazing thing that in my circles that constantly gets talked about. When we welcome the stranger, we actually bless the world. Who would have thought? And by the way, commendations to all our brothers and sisters who are seeking to fulfill the American dream, but in so doing, bring so much of it back home to their families. It's an amazing thing. Number 4, when we welcome the stranger, we fulfill the vision for our nation. You know that engraved on a plaque at the base of the Statue of Liberty is a poem by Emma Lazarus, way back when. And you know, if you've been to the Statue of Liberty, you know that at the base of the Statue of Liberty, there's broken chains. Have you ever seen it? There's broken chains, and you know what's in each hand of our Statue of Liberty? One is tablets of law. In the other hand is a torch, right? You probably know that one, because when you see it, you see, oh, she's raising a torch. Well, the torch symbolizes progress and future and hope, not the least of which is economic progress, but it's so much more. And the law symbolizes justice and fairness for all. And the chains, the broken chains, right out of Isaiah 58, loose and break the chains of injustice. Now, the words at the base of the statue by Emma Lazarus are these: keep ancient lands your storied pomp. Give me instead your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. Welcome. Welcome those who suffer, those who dream and hope for a torch of hope and liberty and progress under the balance and the governance of the law, and shedding free those chains of injustice. I am an immigrant. Stephan Bauman is an immigrant, just 3 generations removed. How many here? How many here are immigrants? Is there anybody here who cannot raise their hand? Maybe First Nations, Original Americans. Have we forgotten where we've come from and the promise that came to our ancestors and the mercy perhaps that was given them and the process upon which they could become legal citizens like my grandfather Heinrich Bauman in 1852. 3, when we welcome the stranger, we bring revival to our nation. Some of the fastest growing churches in our country are immigrant churches. Their values are conservative. Their passion, we saw it today in the worship time. Oh, beautiful. It's a light among us, a beautiful light. Missiologists, theologians say that these churches are revitalizing our longer, more established churches and bringing a light to our culture. Some thinkers are saying that the hope for our faith in our country is actually the immigrant church. That the revival in our culture, the revival in our own churches would be led and be exemplified by our immigrant churches. When we welcome the stranger, we bring revival to our nation. Number 2, when we welcome the stranger, God blesses us. It's a principle all the way through the Bible, through the Gospels. When we give, when we serve those who are vulnerable, those who are struggling, those who are suffering with injustice, God blesses us. You know the passage in Isaiah 58. And it talks about fasting. In that context, you could just trade out the word fasting for worship. So they were worshiping God in the Old Testament, the Hebrews. And they were saying things like, why don't you hear us? Why haven't you helped us? They were in exile. And you know what? God comes back and says, well, actually, this is the kind of fast, this is the kind of worship I'm looking for. I'm looking for those worshipers who loose the chains of injustice, those broken chains, who untie the cords of the yoke, who set the oppressed free and break every yoke. Is it not to share your food, to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? Is it not to clothe the naked, to not turn away from your own flesh and blood? Is it not, I add, to welcome the stranger? Then, so there's a big if-then in that text. If you worship in this way, then our light breaks forth like the dawn, our healing quickly appears, our righteousness goes before us, and the glory of the Lord becomes our rear guard. We call, and the Lord answers. We cry for help, and he says, here am I. Those same words, here am I, show up much earlier in the text of the prophet Isaiah, in Isaiah chapter 6. You know that text. It's that whole calling of Isaiah when he's young, and the coal, the angel comes with a burning coal and places it on Isaiah's lips. It's a purification. And you know what Isaiah says? He says, here am I, send me. Here am I, he says. Same word, it's one word in Hebrew. So Isaiah says in chapter 6, here am I, makes himself radically available to God. That's what it means. I will be radically available to you. And now you've got towards the end of the book, God says, well, if you serve those who are poor and those who suffer, God will make, he says, here am I. God will make himself radically available to us. That's a stunning thought. It's a stunning thought. When we welcome the stranger, God makes himself radically available to us. Here am I, he says. We're a great nation. Alex de Tocqueville observed this in the late 1800s. A French civil servant came through and he looked at our country because they wanted to learn from it in France. And he identified the American people, and he said 9 times out of 10, sometimes 10 times out of 10, the American will help their brother or their sister, way outside of family lines. They'll go the extra mile to help. You can see the quote by Tocqueville, just Google it online. And then he says at the end of that, he says, America is great because America is good. America is great because America is good to each other. When we consider worship way outside the church and we serve our brothers and sisters, and God, thank you for cracking my heart like you cracked that kitchen door. So that I was serving the world, but was I serving my brother and sister right here at home? America's great. We're great because we're good. Number one, last one. When we welcome the stranger, we welcome God himself. Lord, Lord, when did we see you a stranger? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in? Lord, Lord, when did we see you a stranger and invite you in? And you know the response, whatever you do for the least of these, whenever you serve the least of these, whenever you welcome the stranger, whenever you crack open your heart and let your heart fasten on the little people, whenever we go the extra mile, whenever we see ourselves as them and them as us, our own flesh and blood, 3 generations removed from me, 2 for you, 3 for you, 4, just 2 from my wife. It's no longer us and them. When we do that, when we fasten our hearts into the kitchen, whatever you do for them, whatever you do for the least, you do for the living God himself. Thank you, friends.